All right, good morning. I'm Barbara Anderson, Director of Partnerships with SB Act. And so these Upper State Street Regional Action Plan meetings are facilitated by SB Act as part of the Act on Homelessness Collaborative, which is a citywide collaboration. We have a leadership team of 21 individuals that range from city staff to service providers, faith-based organizations, and residents and business owners. That are all working together to address homelessness and its impacts throughout the city of Santa Barbara. So we are actively working toward a 3-year strategic plan. We have very lofty goals, and we also create the structure for accountability to those goals. So at any time, and we don't always have enough time on these RAP meetings, at any time, if you would like to be informed of the progress to those goals, we will take some time throughout a RAP meeting format to be able to share that with you, what we're learning, what we're understanding, successes, some failures, which we call opportunities in the nonprofit world, to learn and grow, and especially to work more closely with all of you to get your insights, feedback, your ideas, and many already incredible solutions. So I've been fortunate enough to have some one-on-one conversations and off of Zoom, which has been so lovely, actually, because I know there's only so much we can do on this platform. And I'm just really open to anyone else who wants to meet, engage with us. We are only successful if we have committed residents and business owners working with us in each of our regions. And so it really is important for us to meet with you, hear from you, and learn from you. And again, we will always work to facilitate that learning through these regional action plans as well. We've had 2 meetings so far, and the word is getting out, which I so appreciate you all sharing the opportunity for people to join these meetings. But we are starting officially what we call our regional action plan format. And so we have 3 other regional action plans, one on the waterfront, east side, and downtown State Street. This is our newest regional action plan for Upper State Street. And I will say Councilmember Friedman asked us to do this a while ago. So this was way before Rose Garden Inn, but our team didn't have capacity at the time. So we know concerns have been emerging and rising in your region for a good bit of time. And a lot of those not correlated with the bridge housing program at the Rose Garden Inn. So we're glad to be with you. We're very, very committed to working with you. And we're actually excited that we're going to be able to target resources to your region to address your concerns. So the standard format of our regional action plans, the first week of the month, which is this week, is focused on strategy. So we've been successful in the past, and Jeff Schaefer with SB Act is here, our Director of Initiatives. He has launched several of these RAPs. We've been successful in the past targeting a specific, I would say, designated area in the neighborhood. So it can be overwhelming. There is a lot happening. A lot of your neighborhoods are being impacted. But if we can target resources to a specific area, and that you can see that with outreach, with law enforcement, and with better coordination, we're able to visibly reduce those impacts in that designated area, then we can move to the next area, right? We'll never let go of that first region, but for us, we want you to be able to see that progress is being made little by little. These are solutions that are complex as the issue is complex. There's a lot of work that's happening simultaneously, both in the short term and the long term, and we'll get to all of that. But region by region, and neighborhood by neighborhood is usually what our focus is. Jeff, anything to add there? Because these really targeted efforts that are 30, 60, or 90 days that we can report back the progress we've been able to make. Again, I know small in comparison to what you're dealing with day to day, but it has been able to really achieve visible results. But Jeff, anything to add from your experience in facilitating this in the other regions in the past year?
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. All of our regional action plans basically went through this same kind of process, which was, first of all, listening posture and just hearing the concerns of all the community members, and giving an opportunity for everyone to share what's happening and to be completely open and honest about it. And then we would normally move into trying to pick a region within that, a smaller neighborhood within that region, to really focus some effort on and get some coordinated outreach going with CityNet Behavioral Wellness, law enforcement, public health, volunteers if needed. And so for State Street, it was originally the 400-500 block. For East Side, it was the Cacique Underpass. And then for Waterfront, it was Pershing Park, Plaza Del Mar. And working overtime primarily with CityNet. So shout out to Brad and Emily and Jessica, organized with the city. So we would bring in environmental services if needed to do some changes, whether it be with parking or lighting or any of those kind of situations as well. We could work directly with the city. And so we were able to, in all three of those regions, show, I think, on those 2 blocks of State Street, working with CityNet, they reduced homelessness by 25% over 60 days. The Cacique Underpass was dealt with within 30 days, where individuals, and Brad can correct me in the chat or whatever, because I may not remember the exact number, but it seemed there were 10 to 12 individuals on the underpass that moved into bridge housing. A majority of them moved into bridge housing and then permanent housing. And then working the Pershing Park encampments, just working with law enforcement and CityNet and other partners to move those individuals on to better opportunities and street exits as well. So just letting you know, that's kind of our approach. We do want to tackle homelessness as a whole across the city, and we do it kind of these region by region. So I too appreciate all of you being on the call. It gives us an opportunity for cross education too. I think Barbara's probably mentioned, but we recognize that no one wants to be impacted by homelessness. And so really the regional action plans are set up to help reduce homelessness, both for the individuals and families that are homeless and for you.
And Councilmember Friedman and Councilmember Sneddon are here with us again this week. Really appreciate you taking the time. I hope you all feel, as residents and business owners in the neighborhood, that your concerns are being heard, questions are being answered. If we don't have the answer, I will find the answer and get back to you. We, again, are really wanting you to feel, and you might not feel it yet, that your priority and resources are being dedicated to your region to be able to address these impacts. So Councilmember Friedman or Councilmember Sneddon, anything to add as we start off laying out the regional action plan objectives and then making sure that we get our agenda covered today?
Well, first of all, thank you for everybody for being here, and we're going to continue to have these weekly, except for the holiday that's going to be coming up. But just wanted to make sure we all have this opportunity, and if there's others out there that anyone is aware of that would like to participate, you can always forward the link to others. We want to make sure that as many people who want to participate know about this, and just appreciate, again, the opportunity to hear from you directly and hear what we're doing and see what we can do to address the impacts that the neighborhoods are experiencing. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Barbara or Councilmember Sneddon if you wanted to say anything.
I would just echo those same sentiments. This is really important, the community involvement, so that we all are aware of what the impacts are. And also, hopefully we can hear back when we're seeing easing of those impacts as well. I'm really appreciative of this team coming together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And what's, again, really valuable for us in these regional action plans is that we have our service provider partners here. We have law enforcement, we have code enforcement with the city. Everyone is here to listen, understand. If there's something we can address right away, we'll address it. And then we set specific action plans from these meetings, again, to monitor and report back progress to you all. So going back to the format of the regional action plans, so the first week of the month is strategy, these targeted areas, and we'll get back to, can we identify 1 or 2 targeted areas as we work on a plan for the next 30 to 60 days. The second week is specifically for community concerns. So we'll always be able to address concerns and questions in each of the weekly wrap meetings, but we know you can't attend a weekly meeting every single week. And so for those that need to prioritize that time, the second week of the month is that open. We want to hear your feedback, concerns, suggestions, and proposals. The third week is a site visit. So SB Act goes out with residents and business owners in the region, in the neighborhood. It can be specifically to that targeted area that's been designated or another area of concern, to do our own conversational outreach, to understand if folks have been connected to case management and outreach, if they work with CityNet, another organization they're working with, what their needs and wants are. So Jeff, having done this work for over a decade, the biggest first hurdle is knowing everyone by name and knowing what they want and what they need. Meeting folks where they're at, building that rapport and trust, understanding what we can do to support them. That's a huge part of the time that's invested in making sure that we're addressing individuals and families experiencing homelessness. The last week of the month is a data reporting meeting. So that is reporting back to you, data we get from the encampment link, what has been done to address those encampments and individual reports, data from law enforcement, as well as CityNet as our primary outreach and case management partner, again, to really try to demonstrate the progress that has been made month to month. So that is the format that we're kicking off this morning. Any initial questions on logistically what the regional action plan is, what the role of SB Act is, and the partners that are here joining us today.
This is about homelessness. Sorry to.
And again, please use the chat if you can. I have my colleague Rich Sander monitoring that, and will interrupt us as we go to make sure your questions are being answered. So after a few conversations with residents in the past couple of weeks, we have a couple of suggestions for targeted areas that we could potentially be looking at with law enforcement and outreach and case management providers. One suggestion was kind of the South Hope, Larada, Hitchcock. It's more than a block, but that kind of region where the YMCA is. And we also know that there's a creek in that area as well. Another suggestion was behind the Big Five. Over at Five Points Plaza. There's a congregation there of folks, again, not necessarily on city property, but absolutely something that we can target in terms of engagement. Any other suggestions for, again, the top one or two areas? It doesn't mean we're not going to address other impacts and other concerns, but this is our ability to target resources, both because we need law enforcement as well as service provider partners to be able to facilitate that outreach. And we know that there's creative solutions like parking enforcement and other things that can be facilitated and have been facilitated, natural barriers that can be put in place to help, again, mitigate those impacts. Craig? I see your hand up.
Yes, hi. Areas of concern, I would say, would be state non-terror, a lot of transient activity in that area, and then near like the Denny's parking lot.
Okay.
So if you're going upstate and you make a right on Ontario, that first, if you make a left, there's a driveway into that Denny's parking lot. And I've observed a lot of people using that as sort of like they living in their cars and just hanging out there. A lot of loitering in that general area at that intersection between State and Ontario. Additionally, McDonald's, there's a lot of drug use and loitering around McDonald's, especially in the back.
Okay, in the back. Thank you, Craig. And I see Melody was agreeing with you too. Okay. So I have the State Ontario, that driveway behind Denny's. I've seen that too, observe that as well. The McDonald's, which tends to be a hangout. It's also a hangout downtown as well. Any other suggestions for, again?
The chat has brought up both Mackenzie Park and Rocky Nook Park.
Jeff, can you provide an update? I know you had a conversation with some of the coaches, that play and have their teams in that park, and some of the impacts that families have been experiencing in Mackenzie Park.
And Dan, who brought it up in the chat, is the person I've been talking with. So Dan, I don't know if you want to share from your perspective, since you are the coach and you have had the experiences. If you'd like to do that, I'll hand it over to you. But if you'd like me to kind of go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the calls that we've had. Yeah, we've had several incidences where individuals have tried to urinate on an 8-year-old girl. There's been prostitution in the bathrooms. We've had some issues of people running onto the field and chasing people on the field, and so it can be a challenge. And certainly we've had some coaches express some interest in having additional law enforcement as well as the ranger there for a resource, so that they feel safe.
Dan also mentioned, I'm sorry. Dan
No,
also mentioned just potential code being used on the restrooms. A lot of the problems seem to be related to the restrooms and endangering some of the parents and kids who are using the park. So I think that's actually in motion potentially with the Rangers. Conversations around is that an option?
Okay. And Sergeant Dijon, you had a good point about Rocky Nook. I mean, this has definitely been, you know, an impacted area for a long period of time. Is there anything in terms of reaching out to other stakeholders I know that they've been focused and trying to work on that as well. And some of those folks are not unhoused. But anything to add just from your perspective on Rocky Nook Park?
What I can do is I can reach out to one of our park rangers, Ernie, and ask that he can contact his counterpart from the county
Okay,
and
great.
see what they could do maybe to have more of a presence there and potentially some outreach.
Okay, great. All right, any
Barbara, this is Matt
other?
from City Net.
Yes, go ahead.
One more spot. I met with some of the business owners next to the Rose Garden, so east of the Rose Garden, behind the donut shop. So the sort of service alley behind there, CityNet has been watching that and patrolling that as well. So if we're creating a list, we should make sure that is included.
Behind Spud Nuts, is that you're saying right next?
Yeah, that entire shopping center, that entire back alley.
Okay, thank you. And Brad, I know that your team has been conducting and facilitating outreach in that region. Just being present up there, it's not part of the work you're doing at the Rose Garden Inn, but that you have taken that on, knowing that, you know, the area is being disproportionately impacted, like many of our other areas in the city. Anything to add just in terms of the outreach that you've been able to do and kind of what that perimeter is that you've been able to reach regularly?
Yeah, so on the call with me today, I'll answer your question, but Emily is sick today, so she sort of oversees that team, but we do have Al, he's one of our regional supervisors, as well as Jessica Bruce, who's our chief program officer. They're both on the call as well, but we've been patrolling, as we've talked about in these meetings, sort of the area that you can see from the Rose Garden parking lot, all the way sort of Jack in the Box, you know, sort of that entire section. Since we've been there 24/7 at the Rose Garden Inn, we've been monitoring that regularly. We are also going out both before the Rose Garden, and because this is not just a Rose Garden conversation, this is upper state conversation. We'll continue to patrol the area in general. But I mean, our teams are going, that's why a list like this is helpful. We obviously partner with law enforcement very well. And so we'll go anywhere that we recognize we can be helpful or try to be helpful, whether that's near the YMCA or, you know, wherever we can go, particularly if we can be targeted in our efforts, we are willing and we will make that happen. So we do have staff that are working on a daily basis that can respond.
Thank you so much.
Barbara, can I just add in terms of spots? There's a lot of, I think these are all spots that I've noticed, but in particular, by the Big Five on the Caltrans 101 North off ramp. I talked with code enforcement about it, and it is Caltrans, and so it's challenging to do it. But that encampment is growing. And just this morning, when I was driving back from dropping my son off at school, I saw a woman with a shopping cart, and she actually had like a dresser that was going into there. And so it's actually growing, and the tents are getting bigger, and there's some trees there. So I think it's a fire hazard. And I know it takes a little bit longer to address that because it's Caltrans. So that's just one I personally noticed. So I just wanted to raise that since it was raised here, that it is growing.
We have absolutely heard that. I've seen that myself. Lucille Boss, who's the interim encampment response coordinator for the county, has been invited to participate in these regional action plans. And so I'll reach out to her about that specific encampment and where it is on the priority list to be able to address. I know they're working closely with Caltrans to be able to clear these encampments and then also remonitor them to make sure that they're not occupied again. So the park ranger for the county in terms of Rocky Nook Park and the efforts that they've conducted there for outreach, as well as this encampment that is in that Caltrans property behind Big Five that's growing. I'll reach out to Lucille from the county to understand better if this is on their radar and how and when and that can be prioritized. So So there was a question about prioritization. So those two things can happen outside of the prioritization of other regions in the neighborhood. But I want to hear a little bit more. Liz, I see your hand up.
Hi, thank you, Barbara. Just Liz Stoss with the City of Santa Barbara. I just wanted to give you an update on the 101 freeway corridor, since you mentioned Lucille. They are working on an application to the state. We're partnering with them to try to get funding for encampment resolution grants. So that's something that's due at the end of this month. So hopefully we'll have more resources to divert outreach. And I'm not 100% sure how that program is going to be operated, but they are seeking for funding to prioritize areas along the 101 and the railroad corridor.
Great. And I know we've had, better luck coordinating with Caltrans now that they actually have financial support from the state to be able to clear encampments as well. So both the city is seeking that funding opportunity and Caltrans having those resources, and that the county has this now encampment response task force. So we have the city encampment response coordination that's happening, and then the county. So wherever these properties in terms of their oversight is, that we can actually pursue this and make sure that it gets addressed. Any other just input in terms of prioritization? So Rocky Nook and behind the Big Five, that growing encampment, we will get back to you and report to you what actions are being taken there. But of the Hope Lorada, State Ontario, Mackenzie Park, Denny's, any more voices in terms of prioritization for those regions? And Jeff and I and CityNet can work together with code enforcement, because they have the encampment response link where data is being reported to see how many reports are coming into each of these areas for prioritization as well. But I wanted to make sure that we're hearing from you directly before we look at the additional data. Craig, great suggestion for fire and AMR. They are part of the encampment response task force. We work with them regularly, and looking to get a representative here, I think, would be helpful, just looking at that fire threat. Karen Davis, I see your hand up. There is a question about the Rose Garden Inn program, so I can answer that while Karen is getting
Barbara,
off
if you make
mute.
me co-host, I could unmute people if you'd like.
She should be, because I'm a host too. It just, she's saying 1 minute, so there must be. So the Rose Garden Inn program is set to end at the end of January. So January 31st is the date for that program. There is, as many of you have heard, efforts through Project Home Key, which is a state funding opportunity to acquire motel and hotel properties because they are ideal to convert to permanent housing. We are looking across the city for those opportunities and pursuing them at every chance that we have. So we will let you know in terms of if those properties are emerging in your neighborhood. If we're able to share that information, we will absolutely share it. But we don't have any word at this time that is in progress. And Natalie, thank you so much for putting up that link to encampment report, as well as individuals of concern. So it allows you to do both. And I think at every opportunity, we're trying to encourage folks to use that form, because that data is used for a lot of purposes, including for advocating for more resources. So it's really important for us to get a better idea data-wise of what we're dealing with, the impacts of homelessness in our neighborhoods. Any other questions or input on prioritization before we move into our next agenda item? Oh, Karen's signing back on. So if she's able to share with us, I definitely want to hear from her. Craig?
Has there been any discussion? This is my first time being able to check in here, but any discussion on working with the local drugstore or liquor stores, like the 7-Eleven, for example, on State Street, outreach discussion with the owners, because what's happening, with people with addiction and alcoholism are, sorry. Can someone hit mute, or is that?
I can mute you. Is that okay? I think it's coming. Is it coming from?
No, it's not. It's just something, I don't know if there's been any discussion about reaching out to the liquor stores in an effort to curb alcoholism and just the abuse of the alcohol in this general area. I know it's kind of a difficult thing to do, but I didn't know if there's been any outreach in that respect.
There's two things there, Craig. One is, we did have a detailed report from the city attorney's office on the alcohol ordinance and enforcement of that ordinance. And, that obviously the other impacts is that it impacts small business. And so we heard that concern as well. But Jeff, in terms of proactively engaging business owners that again have these convenience stores or other places we know are frequented by our unhoused neighbors because it's accessible, they have everything they need, food, and it's cheap. So I'll be honest there. But Jeff, any experience working and engaging proactively with business owners?
Well, I know on the east side where we kind of years ago did the top 10 list on the east side, and we started working with Sharon Byrne and Alan Bleeker and different business owners in the Milpas Community Association. We did have a team of people go and speak with the partners that sell liquor and try to reason with them related to how they could curb some of the behaviors that are affecting the neighborhood. So we can put that on the list of actions that a team of us could go out and do. And I would think that might be law enforcement and or it might not be, but it might be CityNet with SB Act with some business owners just to. I don't know if it's been done directly at that 7-Eleven ever. I don't have any knowledge of who's already had a conversation maybe with the 7-Eleven, but I think we could, that is something we could look into, developing the right team to go talk with them or other businesses.
And if anyone knows or has a somewhat of a relationship with them, that's always the best way, is for us to get an introduction to them. And so Jeff and I are happy to be the link for that introduction so that we can engage in a more proactive conversation with them. But as SB Act increases our presence in the region, we'll be able to use our relationships to find out the best people to approach. Because you're right. I mean, we want to have these conversations that are solution oriented. They're feeling the impacts just like you all are, and how we can work better together. And there's a couple of questions I want to make sure we get to. Raj, my dear friend, how are you doing? I see your hand up.
Good morning. I'm doing good. The issue I would like to bring up today is the possibility of using the Earl Warren Showgrounds. We had a comment earlier in the chat asking from Kathleen. She asked, where are they going to go? So what I've been working on is getting letters to our senator and our congressman on helping us have the availability for Earl Warren Showgrounds. So I've sent a letter to our senator, and I have others sending letters to our senators and to our senator and our congressman on please help us making the Earl Warren Showgrounds property available for safe sleeping and possibilities of temporary shelters. So if who's ever on this meeting, if you could write letters to our congressman and our senator to put pressure on the board of directors of the Earl Warren Showgrounds to allow that area to be used for safe sleeping and temporary housing, that would be very helpful.
Thanks, Raj. I appreciate that. It definitely is a property that we have pursued many, many times over for use for temporary shelter for individuals experiencing homelessness. It is a state-owned property, and the pushback that we received to date is that it is a staging area for wildfire response. So as we get into the winter months, maybe there could be a reconsideration there, but it would only be for a temporary period of time because we know that that is a resource that is heavily utilized by the state of California. So we will let everyone know kind of what the status is. Again, we want to keep reiterating that we don't impose solutions on anyone, those experiencing homelessness as well as residents in the neighborhood. We would never come up with a solution that's not inclusive of your feedback, what you think, mitigating impacts to the neighborhood. And so we want to make sure that we're only working on things that are supported and again, embraced by the neighborhood. Al, I love seeing you with a City Net t-shirt on. How are you? Oh, you're on mute. Yep.
Yes, I unmuted.
We do for each other.
Yeah, so I've been wanting to step in for a minute with it. So it sounds like a lot of the stuff that we are, I have jumped in the conversation about is actually stuff that I have taken care of much of previously on the east side.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And anyone that's known my work and how I do things, I'm very hands-on. I'm very good in the community, connecting with the public, with business owners. So part of that, I was going to jump into that conversation. So that was one of my jobs previously, was connecting with all the business owners. So someone that we all have familiar with on the east side is AC Ramirez, which when I was at PATH had just didn't want anything to do with it. I still get calls from her today, just because we built a great rapport. So that's the type of connection that I would like to, it sounds like we need to begin building, and I would love to be a part of it. And I know CityNet, specifically now being, having Rose Garden up there, would love to connect with the managers, business owners, and create a list of connections that we can have, create that dialogue in the communication of how we can all work together for everybody. Like I said, I actually had my daughter, took her to school this morning as well, and saw the same encampment going on. So being a part of the solution is my main focus. Working in this industry, but then also being a parent and being someone in the community that does see these things going on. To me, that's a great opportunity. So with that, I'll give some people an update because like I said, so I'm primarily the one that is at the Rose Garden.
Great.
Running that facility on a daily basis. I'll be going over there within the next hour, checking out the area. So on my way there, I'm gonna go stop by behind Denny's and go check that out, see if I'm familiar with anyone out there or hanging around there. The biggest thing that I can say from the past that many of us know about is just having space or having someone to connect with to go out there. So I first off want to thank off SBPD because I know they've been over there Tuesdays and Thursdays now. They've actually been in that area on their bike, driving around, trying to, just to be, show that they're around more. So that's one thing I have noticed for the past couple of weeks now that they have been a part of. With our staffing and with security being there, we're able to do that. I will connect with some of our case managers. They do have some off time to be able to do maybe just a little rounds from like the Jack in the Box McDonald's area down to probably around Las Positas, something, around there. Where they go and just connect with someone, offer the services, see what we can do, and kind of get a feel for what everyone else is seeing right now. And then also start interacting that. But I'm going to take care of myself today. I'm going to take care of the Denny's. I'm going to go stop by McDonald's myself. I'm very familiar with a couple people at McDonald's. So we do have people that I know I've seen for years now that used to be my clients that are literally right there at the McDonald's exit, right? When they make a right, where they're usually, panhandling, they have their signs up. They've been there. I actually know them by name. I'll go contact them and see what else is going on. And this is what I've been able to do over the years, is have a connection with some of our clients and some of the population, okay, which will actually give me insight to others that are not doing the things that we don't like.
Right.
So the two people that I'm talking about specifically that are usually there, with their sign, usually doing that, they probably are aware of the other ones that are hanging out in the back, doing the things that we don't want done, especially around our family and ourselves.
Absolutely.
So that's where I can start building that connection of who are the ones that we can start working with, and maybe, you know, if it's saying, hey, there's some illegal activity going on here, can we keep an eye on this? If there's something that we can use some services, start in case management to help them get housed. Us at CityNet, we want to do that. So there are definitely some solutions that can be done through this process, and I will begin that today.
Great, Al, thank you so much. We are so honestly stoked to be working with you in this region, really. And I hope people realize sooner rather than later how much of a gem you are to be able to address these folks and build these relationships in the rapport. So Lillian, I see your hand up, but Jason, you also had your virtual hand up. So I want to make sure that I get to vote. So Jason, then Lillian. Thank you, Al.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. I know a lot of the people in this room, and I wear a lot of hats in town. My role here is as a neighbor, because I live in the community in very close proximity to the Rose Garden Inn. And my question is context first, and then question. The context is there's this not in my backyard phenomenon that oftentimes happens when we try to engage in providing more robust social services for the chronically unsheltered homeless. What mechanism is there for those who live in close proximity to the Rose Garden Inn to be part of these ongoing dialogues? Because a lot of what's happening at the Rose Garden Inn is really affecting the local community. And there's a lot of rumbling that happens around the mailboxes and when people walk their dogs. And this would be a great if there's a forum to draw the community into these discussions. That's my question for you. And I think a lot of the other people who are sitting listening in from the community are probably thinking the same thing.
Absolutely. And so this is our mechanism. So if you have another suggestion for how we can convene, hear from you all about what you're dealing with, how we can address it. There's been some questions about enforcement of around the Rose Garden Inn. So Sergeant Dijon has said that there's regular now bike patrols from law enforcement, as well as CityNet going in that area. I also have some details about the policies and procedures at Rose Garden Inn that Emily Colville has shared with me that I wanted to walk through. So you all know that, folks get warning notices, they get written up if they're back in that area. And then they have no reason to be back there if they don't have a dog or an animal that they're walking. So Sergeant Dijon, can you speak specifically, you mentioned at our last meeting, increased patrols. You've approved overtime for response and patrol in that area, in that region. Can you speak specifically to that? And then we can talk about the Rose Garden Inn property. And I want to make sure that we get to a couple of other questions as well.
Yeah, sure. So I supervise our bike patrol team, the street crime unit. That's a 7-day-a-week team, 2 officers at least per day on bikes. And so every day they will be up through the north end, either on bike or in a vehicle. In addition to that, there was recent approval for overtime for 2 officers twice a week. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 9 and 5, there have been 2 officers in patrol cars on basically in the area we're talking about, Alamar to Big 5, plus blocks on either side, just doing high saturation patrol, making lots of contacts, having some enforcement, doing business contacts. We have an officer up there today doing that. And I found out yesterday that overtime has been extended through the 3rd week in January. So we'll continue to do that for the 2 days a week until that time.
Thank you so much for that. And again, as we prioritize these regions, we can look at even closer coordination with law enforcement and service providers as well. Karen Davis, I see your hand up.
Hi, sorry, I had a problem with my iPad, so I switched to my phone. I really appreciate these meetings, but I do have a concern, as a lot of folks here have put items in chat and they're not being answered. So there's at least 10 questions that people have asked, and those questions I think are very important.
I absolutely agree. And I see your comment there. I'm going through the questions again. There's several on the Rose Garden Inn that we'll talk about as I go into detail about the policies and procedures. We do have folks responding to messages in terms of enforcement of areas that creek behind the Rose Garden Inn property. We also have Natalie responding with the hotline to call, as well as the link to report encampments. Sergeant Dijon, there's a question about what is the ordinance of how close these locations can be near children and schools. And so I'm assuming it's referencing a variety of of things, including a bridge housing program and vicinity of schools, or vehicular homelessness, or individuals experiencing homelessness in general. Are there any ordinances specific to that?
I don't have an answer for you. I can look into that though, through the city attorney's office and get it back to you guys.
Okay. And then there's a question in terms of where folks are moved to. So I will get to that. Karen, is there anything else that you feel we're not addressing in the questions?
No, I just noticed that, other people were talking, and there's a lot of neighbors that are in, say, the upper state area, San Roque, that have concerns. And I just felt like nobody was monitoring what was going on in chat.
We absolutely are. And I apologize if you're feeling otherwise. Also, as part of the recording, all of these questions are captured. So what we did last meeting was pull every single question out, start writing detailed answers to them so that we can keep resharing, because we know that new folks are going to join the calls as we continue forward. So we do want to make sure we want specifics on enforcement, not just increased visibility. There needs to be enforcement in balance with the resources. Completely agree. Sergeant DeJean, anything to add to that? And again, as we target regions, that level of specificity, I hope, will be achieved for you all, that we're able to report back specific progress on these targeted areas. And Al will be able to share with us folks he knows, that he's familiar with, if they're in process, if they're getting support, and try to mitigate impacts to those areas as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave my number in the chat. I would really like specifically from residents and local business, anyone living around the Rose Garden. I will be your main point of contact. Literally, I'm the one there. I was sick for like a little over a week, so I wasn't out, but literally I will be back out in the field and they're usually on a daily basis. And to be honest with you, I want this to be as successful as possible, being the line of work for the past 6 years, and coming from PATH, getting in case management, actually property managing units of 60 currently previously homeless clients. So I've seen all the ins and outs of this. And most of all, I'm a father of 3 beautiful daughters. So I'm a family man. I coach girls basketball. I understand every aspect of what it comes down to. So at the end of the day, our children, our families, ourselves need to be safe, need to be happy, need to be comfortable. But at the same time, we all have a solution. That's why we're on this call, is to see what we can do to help the community in general to end some of this homelessness. And so with the Rose Garden, for me, it's something that can be truly changed in a way of doing things to set them up for success once they get housed. But the process in between is what we're working on right now. And the concerns that you guys have are legitimate, where I need to be notified of those things because I'll handle it immediately. So whether you at 8 o'clock at night and someone's walking through your neighborhood, maybe under the influence or whatever it is, I'm willing to check these areas out, along with working alongside with SBPD, which is just amazing with working with us. And thank you again for the Tuesday and Thursdays being around the neighborhood is going to make a difference. But for you guys to be able to get in contact and get those questions answered, like the gentleman was asking, the forum that we can have, the dialogue that we need to have needs to be the clear communication of knowing who you want to get in contact with. So I'm leaving the number there right now.
Thank you so much,
Al. Because some of these concerns, especially when they happen, I would love to be notified when they're happening. That's the best way for us to be able to take care of them right then and there. And of course, if the SBPD needs to be involved at that point, I will be able to make that decision. But overall, usually once they see me around the area, many of the community, along with anyone at the Rose Garden specifically, they kind of know it's probably not, I shouldn't, I got called for a reason.
Right. Thank you so much, Alan. I'm so glad you're here with us this morning. There's a couple, again, specific questions about the Rose Garden in specific, and I want to get to them, Carol and Karen and Melody. So detailed information has been shared about how that property is being managed in the bridge housing program in general. So clients are engaged in weekly case management meetings and complete weekly room checks. Those room checks are conducted by a property manager at one of their supportive housing units. So they come in, they understand the client's have agreed to a specific code of conduct. So violations of that code of conduct are written up as warning notices, and individuals are exited from the program if they continue to violate that code of conduct. A couple of things I want to share to, again, try to address some of your specific questions about that property and how it's being managed. Clients are provided 3 meals a day and laundry once a week. So in terms of them leaving for meals, they're provided meals on site. They have a 9 p.m. curfew where they have to be on site, and 11 p.m. curfew to be in their room. They have, CityNet has 24-hour security to report any breach of curfew, but they also have 24-hour on-site case managers to address any behavior issues that may arise. So this is unique to any other bridge housing program that's happening in the city or the county, that both of these are happening, both security and case management on site 24/7 to mitigate impacts that we're experiencing in the neighborhood. All bikes are registered and accounted for before putting them into the bike rack area. Clients have a designated smoking area in the center of the parking lot, which is visible and monitored. Anyone who's caught on the path between the creek and the fence are also provided with write-ups. The only exceptions are clients who have dogs who are allowed to use the grassy area next to the Rose Garden Inn to allow their animals out. Okay, so that is just in terms of code of conduct, how that's managed. And Carol is saying, I've never seen a security guard out of a chair in front of the Rose Garden Inn, never an officer. People are shooting up and using the outdoors as a bathroom. Al or Brad, do you want to speak to this specifically? We know that there's individuals that are hanging out around the Rose Garden that are not Rose Garden Inn clients. Each client, again, has a room with a bathroom and a shower that they're able to use regularly. And we also know that the room searches and code of conduct that they cannot be using drugs or alcohol at that property. But Al, anything to add to that in terms of behaviors that are happening around the property?
Like I said, I will definitely do a follow-up. I guess maybe when I pull up, they get up out the chair if they're not. I know a specific, one specific security guard that I know that's been helping out big time in the back is Robert, where I got to just point out and just to acknowledge, because he's one of our primarily Monday through Friday days that he goes around. He's actually gotten from me, which you guys know I used to run the Step Up cream, which is something we are looking to begin to do in some form in that area, where he's actually has a trash picker and goes around that back area to pick up trash. I have been informed a couple of times, not as of late, of the needles and stuff like that, but that's when we started enforcing, and specifically myself started enforcing the rules of any of our clients not being allowed to go walk through that path area, and keeping that front area able to be used where it's inside. Because the one thing that happens once they start walking down that path, and that's when if their friends are allowed or anyone around there, that's where concerns come in and questions come in. Officer John Williams, which I saw in the chat, which I was asking messaging back, he's been an extreme help as well with that area. So specifically with the security, I will go take care of that today. When I get over there, I will also contact the supervisor for them to give them a heads up, the feedback that I got off this meeting, and that they need to be doing their rounds they have two officers there available to work. So I'll double check what the agreement we have with them, whether it's every 15 minutes, 30 minutes to do their rounds of the property on and off the surrounding areas to make sure that is being done. So I would like.
And I was going to jump into, we have 2 security guards. The one does sit up at the front to watch the traffic because they come around the corner of the office. And then the other one that is patrolling or in the back area. So you will see one sitting in the front and the other one is patrolling. So there's 2 officers. We have 2 to 4 to 5 staff on site, 14 hours a day. And then we go down to 1 site manager at night. So there's multiple bodies there patrolling the area. So yes, you will be seeing one sitting there because that corridor. What happens is they come, or if people have guests that are not invited, they'll come around that corner and sneak in. So that's why we have that security guard sitting there. But there is another one that is patrolling and walking along with our staff.
Great, thank you so much, Jessica. And Sergeant DeJean, I see your hand up.
Yeah, there was a question or comment about stats, and so I wanted to provide some. Since we've started adding overtime officers on the north end, there's been 5 days where we've had those assignments. There have been 17 17 law enforcement contacts that resulted in either warnings, citations, or arrests, and 20 business contacts. Our officer that's up there working overtime right now, I'm listening to the radio, she's actively making an arrest right now in the 3900 block of State Street. And I was up there yesterday and spent 2 hours on bike with one of my officers in this area. So those are the stats. As far as you guys not seeing us, I don't know. I apologize that you're not, but I can assure you that we're up there in force often.
Thank you so much, Sergeant DeJean. And I also want to get to, how clients, their progress is being monitored, how they're exiting and transitioning from the program.
Yeah. Barbara, I can give you some updates on those stats from the project.
Great.
So right now we currently have 39 residents occupying 34 rooms at the site. 11 of the clients have vouchers in hand and will be moving into permanent housing in the next 60 days. And the other 27 clients are dock ready and are waiting for the coordinated entry system to match them to a voucher. So, without putting these people in the motels where they're stabilized so we could get their documents, getting these clients dock ready would not have been possible. So hopefully we'll have, by the end of, by spring, we'll have over 38 clients moved into permanent housing off of the streets. This week we had one client that obtained a job, which is huge. So we're really excited about that. And we've had 3 clients that have exited to positive outcomes, which means they've exited to long-term stable housing. So, the opportunities at the Rose Garden have created great opportunities for this clientele. And so we're really focusing on getting them housed, and we apologize for the impacts on the community, but we're trying to keep everything going well at the Rose Garden and make sure that population is not impacting the community, along with trying to address the other ones that have been in that area for the last few years, just hanging out.
And we'll be here facilitating this regional action plan after the Rose Garden program, bridge housing program ends. So please know, we know the impacts prior to the program launching, as well as any impacts after the program closes. We're here to help address your concerns. Councilmember Friedman.
I just wanted to be sure Lillian had a question earlier, and I'm not sure she had a chance to ask him. We're running short on time, but she actually just logged off. So I just want to be sure she was able to ask her question before we run out of time.
Great. Thank you. I'll try to make it brief. I wanted to respond to all of you. I'm so appreciative. I am newly retired and I've lived in the neighborhood for 25 years. So I'm walking a lot during the day and see a lot of activity. I really appreciate the efforts that the Rose has made. And when you look at Denny's, I've noticed a lot of times drug activity in the parking lot of the gas station. In front of on Terre and State Street. So I don't know if that bathroom is open or if it's one of the few available bathrooms, but I know from attending going to the nail salons that they have a lot of trouble cleaning up behind. And even there's a small area next to Janine's. It's a walkway. And stuff happens in there. So I just really appreciate everyone's efforts. I know it's a complicated situation.
Thank you, Lillian. Really appreciate that. And again, noting that alleyway in the back of those, that strip mall where Janine's to tee off and Spudnut Donuts is there. So that has been noted to be prioritized. You're adding kind of that parking lot with the gas station, which kind of crosses over with the Denny's back parking lot. So we'll also put that on the list. So we have about 6 to 8 different locations. We will absolutely at the next meeting share with you a prioritization of that. Al is also going to reach back to us and share with us how he's been able to engage to monitor what the needs are, so that maybe that can help us prioritize the targeted resources in those regions as well. But even having the regions, right, and having you identify that there's heavy activity in these places is really helpful for us. And as we get to that 3rd week, walking through and understanding and facilitating that site visit, we ask a few of you, again, if you have the time as residents and business owners, you know the areas, the time of day, the activities that are happening in those locations. your level of engagement in helping us identify again by name what their needs are, what their wants are, how we can support them, if they're connected to CityNet in some way, if they're familiar again with other outreach providers. We have other providers that are on this call. There's a day center that's operated up near lower 154 that again, we're all communicating with each other to be able to address and reduce these impacts. So I hear you on the questions. There was a question about how homeowners in San Roque contact. So one, Sergeant Dijon has emphasized if there is criminal activity, illegal activity, if you feel unsafe, call 911. We have a homeless response directory. Karen shared that on Nextdoor. We'll continue to share it as we get more participants and emails. I'll continue to distribute that. It really is meant for residents and business owners specifically, that if you see a certain behavior, this is who you call. So SB Act has worked with a variety of providers to be able to create that list. We'll keep updating that list, but it seems that we're getting some feedback that that's a helpful resource. I also, if we can't get to questions here, we will make sure that we answer your questions and get back to you at each of the meetings. After 911, again, if an incident requires that, there is the encampment response link that Natalie has posted in the chat. We've also shared that on Nextdoor, that form stack URL. That's where you report an encampment or an individual of concern. The last piece is, again, if there's something you want to keep on our radar, Al has shared his contact information. My email is there and available. Please reach out to us and let us know. So again, we're trying to make these regional action plan meetings as valuable and productive for you as possible, but we know it's 1 hour on Zoom and there's only so much we can do. So if you also want to take me up on the opportunity to meet with me one-on-one, please do not hesitate to reach out and let me know. And I want to take the time to hear your concerns. So we'll close the meeting out right now for this morning. There's a lot we still need to get to. Next week is that general community concern. So again, letting you know the prioritization action items that have been taken over the week to address some of the questions and concerns that have been brought up. Natalie just reposted the link again. Any last thoughts as we close out this morning? Yes, Raj.
This has been brought up before in the past. We need to have parking codes around our schools during school hours. There has actually been needles found in the schoolyard on the Mesa. So I would like the city council members that are present to take this into consideration of having no parking codes during the school hours. So
Raj, thank you for bringing that up. There was a couple of comments and questions in the chat about that. So Sergeant Dijon is going to get back to us about what ordinances are in place. And again, if there's an opportunity to advocate for adjustments there, we obviously have Councilmember Friedman and Sneddon here, and we can have that kind of information exchange and look at that opportunity for sure. Thank you for bringing that up again. Councilmember Friedman or Councilmember Sneddon, anything to close us off today before we reconvene next Thursday at 10?
Just wanted to, I think we got a good indication of where the hot spots are, and from living in that neighborhood as well, I concur that all those are mentioned and all those issues are going on. So appreciate the extra attention to that, and see you all next week.
Yeah. Please take my number down. Give me a call when those incidents or, uncomfortable action or, are happening. I would love to address them right then and there. Because like I said, about 90-95% of this community and population, I know. Right. So when walking down your street and, they're in a cart and it's just, causing a ruckus, they might be intoxicated, give me a call. I could probably go identify them, have a conversation with them, figure out a better place that we can help them and hopefully start case managing them if we're ready not. So please reach out to me. I'm very hands-on and I will be in the community. If you don't know me, let's get to know each other.
Thank you so much, Al. Really appreciate that. A couple of last logistical items. One, this recording will be available on our YouTube channel for the SB Act. We'll share that link both through Nextdoor. Karen has been offering to put it up on the Facebook page, and we'll also send that out as to our distribution list. So the emails that we have collected, we will follow up. We also capture action-oriented meeting minutes. So things that have come up that are next steps and action items so that we can report on at the following meeting. So we can send send both of those to you. And I think, oh, and the Zoom link is reoccurring. So this will remain, and you can share this Zoom link for all of the meetings that we have ahead. Craig, I see your hand up. I want to make sure.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to thank our police. They've done an outstanding job. However, I would like to encourage Councilmember Friedman Stettin to really push an effort to either add more police officers. I know it's expensive, but I would like to say that when I have called in, and it's been several times, that there's not enough officers available. And that's just a numbers issue. So that's just my request, that we can find a way, if we can, to add funding for more officers. They do an outstanding job.
Craig, thank you so much for bringing that up. And Sergeant DeJean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're 30% understaffed right now in terms of personnel, and that you can't hire fast enough, quick enough. And just in terms of the openings just remaining open. And I know that even our service providers, a number of organizations or businesses are dealing with that same impact. But anything to add there in terms of your capacity?
Everything you said is right on point. We are way down, and we're hiring like crazy, trying to get people to come in and apply. So refer good candidates, please.
Exactly. And Taylor mentioned that too. It's recruiting. So Craig, thank you for bringing that up. It's absolutely top of mind. It is a priority for all members of the city council, the current mayor, the incoming mayor, to make sure that we have a capacity law enforcement wise across the city. All right, we're 4 minutes past. I try to be right on time, but thank you so much for staying with us. Really appreciate your commitment to engage today. We will, again, questions that we haven't been able to answer, we'll make sure we'll get back to you and answer those questions, and we'll share at our next meeting. I hope you all have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Really appreciate it.